What's kicking? We are back for another episode of Pickin Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by my amigo Tom. How are you, Tom?
Oh, I'm doing great. Can't wait for UFC 302. Makhachev Poirier, Strickland Costa. There's a lot of rumors going around about some potential, what do you call it? Some potential jinxes on this card. About Paulo Costa being on the card as the champion. The champion always loses, something like that.
I don't know.
Poirier undefeated in June. I think it's like 3-0, 4-0 in his career in June. There's some stuff swirling.
I don't know. I've heard some stuff. I've heard some rumors. I've been known to be a superstitious person, but I'm actually just a little stitious.
I'm not superstitious. I'm just a little stitious.
Yeah, so we'll see if any of that curses and voodoo comes into effect this weekend in New Jersey in the Prudential Center.
Agreed.
I'm looking forward to this card, and I'm looking forward to breaking it down with you. First, though, before we jump into that, I would like to remind everybody to like, comment, and subscribe, please, here on YouTube. If you appreciate the videos, then we appreciate your likes, comments, and subscribes. Jump in the chat. Let us know what you think of our picks. You can also follow us on Spotify. Over on Spotify, you can watch and listen to the full episode in your car. You can use CarPlay for it if YouTube doesn't work in your CarPlay. And follow us on X and Instagram @_PickinWinners. All right. Let's jump into the prelim notables. How about that?
All right. Prelim notables. Come on.
Well, I'd say all of these prelim fights are pretty notable. So why don't you start us off with one of them?
We got Mickey Gall taking on Basel Hafez, and you could tell from the record here of Mickey Gall, 2-3 over his last 5, 7-5 overall, dating back to 2019, his fifth fight. Salim Touhari, unanimous decision win just about 5 years ago. Mike Perry, he lost, and then Mike Perry is gone and having a very successful BKFC career. And Mickey Gall still in the UFC after that loss. Win by submission via Jordan Williams, and then taking a loss to Alex Morono, also on this card. Mike Malott also, had some hype derailment recently for Mike Malott. And then you have Basel Hafez, 3-2 over his last 5. Yes, he has a loss to Evan Cutts, a split decision in CFFC. More recently, he has a split decision loss to Jake Della Maddalena. I mean, taking a split decision loss to JDM at this point, I think looks really, really good on you and your stand-up striking ability. I think Basel Hafez is a strong enough ground game that is going to thwart anything by Mickey Gall. I think more or less we may see Mickey Gall, who's a stand-up fighter by trade, also has some good jiu-jitsu, a Gracie, New Jersey Academy graduate. Yep, you see it right there. 6'2", 170, long guy, but I think ultimately the jiu-jitsu is not going to save him against Basel Hafez. I think Basel's going to do a great job of keeping the fight standing and picking apart Mickey Gall. I could even see Basel potentially, taking this one. You saw right hand right there. I could see him finishing Mickey Gall maybe in the second round, maybe even the first.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I never really thought too highly of Mickey Gall in the past, and he's a stepping stone for Basel Hafez. You hit the nail right on the head. Not much more I could say about that one without wasting everybody's time, because we got so many more of these fights to talk about. How about we move on up to the next one now? We got Jake Matthews fighting Phil Rowe, and I'm a fan of Jake Matthews. I like this guy, the Celtic kid coming out of Australia. Sure, he's, win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. He's been in the UFC for a long, long time, though, I think at this point, just about 10 years. 29 years old at this point. We've seen fighters that have been fighting for a while start to enter their 30s and really enter their prime. And Tom, you and I were talking about it before we jumped on here today, that you see a new version of Jake Matthews, a resurgence of Jake Matthews almost. And I kind of agree with you. I also see, Phil Rowe's kind of falling off a little bit. He's good. He's been good in the past, but last fight against Neil Magny, split decision. Didn't look too great. You want to be something in this division. Neil Magny's great competition. You have to beat him. Jake Matthews is on his way up now, it looks like at this point. I'm rolling with Jake Matthews here. Great stand-up striking. Overall well-rounded, intelligent. So I got Jake Matthews here this week, minus 165 favorite. And the people at Tapology only slightly agree with me. It's not a majority decision, but I'll roll with that. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, Phil Rowe, I think he's a guy who's traditionally hasn't had a ton of weight issues, but I think, going into this fight here, I think that's definitely going to be something to look at is Phil Rowe and ultimately how he's coming into the fight. And Jake Matthews, I think, is a guy who, I mean, they've both been fairly active coming in off of that Neil Magny split decision 11 months ago. Jake Matthews, unanimous decision, lost to Michael Moraes. Michael Moraes, 15-0 6 months ago. Just been a little bit more active. I think Jake Matthews is at a point in his career at 29 years old that he really wants to put his foot on the gas and show what he can do. It's been loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. I know he had a really great performance against Andre Fiallo, another great performance against Darius Flowers. Unfortunate decision, loss to Matthew Semmelsberger in that middle fighter. I think, that was his chance to really rocket his name up and just let that one pass him by. But I think Jake Matthews definitely has something going for him. I think he's a good striker. And like I said, I think, coming into this fight, I think, Phil Rowe and ultimately the endurance game, maybe going into the third round, having been getting beaten up by Jake Matthews a little bit, I think potentially could be a concern here. So I'm going to ride with you. Jake Matthews is the pick.
All right. Sounds good. I kind of want to talk about the next one for a little bit. We got Grant Dawson versus Joe Solecki. And I'm rolling with Grant Dawson here. He is a minus 320 favorite. Most recently that I've seen, and I agree with that. Joe Solecki is good competition, but Grant Dawson, you got to remember who this guy was. He hadn't lost in the UFC until his last fight, where he got knocked out by Bobby Green. He was a pretty big favorite going into that one as well, but he has taken 7 months off. It did feel like kind of a fraud check moment, but in Grant Dawson's defense, he was kind of thrust into the main event of a fight night. I don't really think he was ready for that. He hadn't really fought anybody of Bobby Green's caliber. Hadn't really been in a 5-round fight before, even though that one ended early. The stage was set pretty quickly for a guy who really was inexperienced in that realm. Now, I could see Grant Dawson working his way back up through the lightweight division, maybe to another main event opportunity at some point in the future. Get a good win out this weekend over Joe Solecki tomorrow. I see him getting back on the right track. He's got good striking. He's taken a lot of time off since the knockout. And, also great wrestling, great ground game. We saw Drakkar Close kind of take advantage of Joe Solecki in the ground game and, ultimately put him out in his last fight around. So I'm going to go with Grant Dawson here. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, another fight, another agreement from me. I think Grant Dawson's going to go out there and get it done. I think he's a little bit more well-rounded, and I think Joe Solecki is largely a ground guy who that's been where we've seen some of his holes. So I think that's really not a great, that's not a great characteristic to have. If you're a strong ground guy, having somebody be able to beat you there is not a it's not a check mark in the positive. I think Grant Dawson's also just a little bit bigger. He's got a better striking game, so I'm going Grant Dawson in this one.
All right, what do we got next?
Up next, Jailton Almeida versus Alexander Romanov.
Yeah, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, listen, I know Jailton Almeida can get some hate, bouncing back and forth from light heavyweight to heavyweight. Now, I guess considerably bulked up to, 241. He's 6'3", 79-inch reach. He's not going to be the bigger guy here in terms of overall size. I mean, Romanov, I believe, cuts to 264. He's just a massive dude. Only 6'2", so a slight height advantage for Jailton Almeida MMA, not a huge input there to the height advantage. I think the 4-inch reach advantage for being able to stay on the end of his jab and then decide when to go in and take Alexander Romanov down. King Kong obviously is strong when it comes to grappling, but I think Jailton Almeida is a lot more technical and a lot, being a light heavyweight, I think aids him here to have a little bit more skill than the majority of these heavyweights. And I think that's going to be the case here against Alexander Romanov. We were thinking he was going to potentially be a force in the UFC, but, got a win over Jared Vanderaa. Looking back at some of the opponents, Chase Sherman, and you have the loss to Marcin Tybura, my majority decision. Alexander Volkov punches from back control. Volkov has almost hit another resurgence in his career as well. He's got like a real back and forth one, and then coming back, finally getting a win against Blagoy Ivanov. Just looking at these wins, it's not against the highest level of competition. I think Jailton Almeida far out exceeds any skill that Alexander Romanov opponent may have over him yet. So I think Almeida will be able to easily overmatch Romanov for the win.
Yeah. Speaking of Volkov, I believe that Volkov was supposed to fight Jailton Almeida and had to pull out this weekend. But you're right. Alexander Romanov not up to snuff. We did see Jailton Almeida lose to Curtis Blades the last time around. Not high IQ. But Alexander Romanov isn't exactly high IQ, high skill either. We've seen the trajectory that Curtis Blades had. That was a big test for Jailton Almeida. Kind of like a number one contender for the interim belt fight between him and Curtis Blades. And ultimately, Jailton Almeida was not successful. Alexander Romanov, not as good as Curtis Blades. So going with Jailton Almeida this weekend. Right there with you. What do we got next?
Moving up the card, we have the prelim main event, Roman Kopylov versus Cesar Almeida. I know you had some thoughts on Cesar Almeida. You actually pointed out to me that the first 3 fights of Cesar Almeida's career were all against Alex Pereira. He went 1-2 in those bouts. All of them went to decision. So I think that's particularly interesting when you think about Cesar Almeida's kickboxing career, 5-0, obviously early in his MMA career, transitioning over later, like Alex Pereira. He is a little bit older here in the 185-pound division. You have a little bit younger guy in his prime or at the end of his prime, potentially, in Roman Kopylov, who, you brought up, throws a lot of punches. I think this is going to be a majority striking battle, unless Roman Kopylov is not winning on the feet, and then I could think that he may turn to more of an MMA style ground game grappling approach to try and get it done here, being that Cesar Almeida is so green. But he has MMA fights dating back to 2016, so I think that is particularly interesting. You look at some of the bouts that he was in here. Look at the different promotions that he's in. He has basically 3-0 with a kickboxing career before he gets a unanimous decision win over Luis Fernando on the Contender Series. You want to talk about his knockout win over Dylan Budka just about 6 weeks ago?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he elbowed the crap out of him. He was getting grappled up against the cage and just gave him elbows. Put him out. Looked really good defensive grappling-wise against Dylan Budka. But I expect something different this week out of Roman Kopylov. I expect a slightly different game plan. Roman Kopylov, nasty body kicks, really, really nasty body kicks. Loves to throw them, loves to surprise them with the head kick right after that then as well. Really just switch things up, change levels. He's used to being the bigger, stronger guy, and Cesar Almeida is listed at 6'1" on Tapology, but for some reason he looks shorter. And Roman Kopylov always looks, like a pretty big guy in the cage. Like, we see this often. Not that I'm making this up or anything. We do see this often that fighters' heights are mislisted because oftentimes they come from their camps, and their camps are the ones submitting them to these websites and stuff like that. So it does happen. But Cesar Almeida, like you said, beat Alex Pereira in the past, so he's no schlub when it comes to the kickboxing as well. But Roman Kopylov, like you said, has the MMA advantage. So he is a strong guy. He's got a really good base. He uses a wide base sometimes to really walk people down to the cage and then administer a serving of knees to the body. Loves the body attacks. I expect a full mix-up of MMA from Roman Kopylov this week. Just a flurry of attacks, using all of his weapons, throwing elbows. I mean, we're going to see elbows out of Cesar Almeida as well, but the MMA experience is really what's going to come into effect for Roman Kopylov this week. But just keep an eye out, though, because if Cesar Almeida wins, the instant storyline that's going to be all over Instagram and every social. Oh, this guy beat Alex Pereira. It's going to be everywhere. And Roman Kopylov is becoming a name in that division as well. He's really been putting guys lights out. So if he puts out Cesar Almeida, which I think he will this week, it also gives him just as much credit. That's all I got about that. I'm going with Roman Kopylov.
I'm with you. Next fight is the main card, so let's do it.
All right. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, probably the fight I'm looking to least on this this main card here. Randy Brown coming in as the favorite. Whenever I think about Randy Brown, I really just think about how long that guy is in the cage and how much bigger he tends to be than all of his other 170-pound opponents. 6'3", 78-inch reach here. Might be like just a hair under Roman Kopylov in the 85-pound division. So Randy has really long legs, really long arms, great deep kicks, keeps people on the end of his punches. Not a ton of ground game here. He was, fought to a decision over Wellington Turman, which didn't really age too well. Has a win over Muslim Salikov straight right. Muslim is obviously aging, but it's still good to see the knockout powers there for Randy Brown, 33 years old. Decision win over Francisco Trinaldo, split decision win over Chaos Williams, can go in there and throw under fire. Lost via submission to Jack Della Maddalena. So I think Randy Brown against the top level of competition just doesn't have it. But I think against that middle tier, maybe somewhere in the rankings between 8 and below, Randy can definitely go in and have competitive bouts with. Elijah Zaleski, he's coming off that majority decision, I believe, against Rinat Fakhratinov. And that blue D tells me something is going on with this here. It went to a majority draw decision against Rinat Fakhratinov. Remember that Abubakar Nurmagomedov. A lot of hard to pronounce names here for Elijah Zaleski dos Santos. Jeez, it's just a mouthful all over the place. He's a guy you could see here in his record: 14 wins, 1 loss by KO, TKO. A lot of them coming in the first round. A couple submissions here, not really his thing. And then, you have 4 unanimous decisions going his way. And you look at some of his, competition: split decision, majority decision, decision here against Benoit Saint Denis, which aged very well. Has the loss to Muslim Salikov, lost to Li Jingliang. That threw me off seeing it essentially backwards. Luigi Van Dramini. A lot of people on this resume here, but with that being said, I'm kind of torn. I'm probably going to go Randy Brown just because he's a little bit younger here. Zaleski is aging, as you can see, 37 years old, 6 months, 37 years old, 6 months, inching towards 40 every day. Randy Brown, a little bit longer, a little bit younger, a little bit more dynamic. I think he's going to take this one.
Right there with you. The younger man wins most of the time, and Elijah Zaleski is in that range that you were talking about. Of guys in the division that Randy Brown has the ability to beat and really just snap off long jabs and take advantage of the height and the reach advantage and the leg length advantage. So, yeah, he's going to use all of his weapons this week against Elijah Zaleski and, put on maybe a show, or maybe be boring. More likely he's going to be boring, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fight where, honestly, I don't think it'll be boring. I think it'll be semi back and forth. I think Randy's going to win the majority of the exchanges, if not just have more volume. He's longer, so he's going to be landing more. I think neither of these guys are going to have a ton of knockout power. Like, I think Elijah Zaleski does have solid defense, even for 37 years old. So I think he's going to be at the end of Randy's jabs. He may land some good shots himself, but I think you're going to see like maybe a 2-1 or a 3-0 decision for Randy Brown. I think decision is the most likely outcome here.
All right, right there with you. All right, what do we got next?
Nico Price, Alex Morono. Speaking of decisions, I don't think this one is going to go to one. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I think I'm right there with you. This is actually Nico Price versus Alex Morono too. What happened the last time these two guys fought? But yeah, Nico Price has been getting knocked out lately. Last 2 fights got finished by Phil Rowe. Got finished by Robbie Lawler, has taken 10 months off. But Alex Morono is a guy that likes to close the distance, really get in your face, press you, give you pressure against the cage, land shots in from close. And Nico Price is, he's the longer guy. He's got the longer reach, so he's going to be snapping off some jabs, trying to keep Alex Morono at range. But I think ultimately Alex Morono is going to close the distance because smaller guys have gotten in there, or guys of similar stature like Robbie Lawler, who was getting up there in age as well and just retired. Alex Morono is still pretty young, has finished guys like Nico Price in the past, coming off a win against Court McGee, lost to Joaquin Buckley. I mean, how about that back and forth between Shavkat and Joaquin Buckley?
I just want to jump in here. I'm realizing now this is the fight against Alex Morono back in 2017 that Nico Price got overturned to a no contest after he tested positive for weed after Morono lost to punches. They say at 5 minutes in the second round, so in between rounds. How about that? Nico Price having the win against Alex Morono about 7 years ago, overturned on a failed weed drug test.
That's wild. Didn't know the history behind that. It's so long ago. I think Nico Price has regressed over his past couple of fights, though, personally. And Alex Morono has been pretty consistent. He's win-loss, right? Now, maybe that doesn't bode well for him, considering he is on a little bit of a pattern. But Nico Price just lately, his chin has just been shattered. And I don't think you're going to see the same result in this fight as you did the last time around 7 years ago. So I'm going with Alex Morono, probably to win this one by knockout. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think, Nico Price has some strong grappling, unless it's a grappling. And even as of late, that hasn't shown itself. Lost to Robbie Lawler via hooks is obviously not a great look. Robbie Lawler is 40-something years old. Not to knock Robbie Lawler. He's 42, but he's 42. Getting knocked out by him at 42 years old, lost via punches to Phil Rowe. And we just talked about how much of a decision guy Phil Rowe potentially can be. Losses to Michael Behead. He has a win over Alex Oliveira, but Cowboy Oliveira has since retired. So, I think you encapsulated it perfectly when you said that Nico Price has regressed. His fighting style was predicated on having a good chin, exchanging shots, and that's what made him fun. He could get knocked out, but he also could knock out. But the fact that his chin is not there to withstand any knockouts or knockout power coming back at him for him to even progress in the fight to achieve a knockout, I think is really problematic. So I think, in this one, Alex Morono obviously has a lot more success as of late. His chin's still intact. Unanimous decision win over Court McGee, which is a great Tim Means, via guillotine choke. Even Semmelsberger, be able to go back and forth with. I think that for Alex Morono, he's set up to have a win in this fight. And honestly, now that I think about it, Nico Price and Mickey Gall feel like the same guy.
Yeah, sort of. Kind of been around the block at this point.
Fun fighters, but aren't really doing well as of late. And both have had chins that got them to where they are. And now the chins have shattered and they're riding on like name value and hype alone. And I feel bad saying that because I like both guys, but it's like, damn, I feel like those are two sad stories of like two guys that like we thought could have were like fan favorites and just ultimately it was like just a slow trickle. I mean, Donald Cerrone you could even put in that category too. Tony Ferguson you could put in that category, like the same like fun fan favorites. That's just
yeah, you're right, because those guys always will give you an entertaining fight. There's definitely levels to it though. There's definitely levels.
Add Vicente Luque to that list. We're going to talk about him in a second, but like add Vicente Luque to the list of guys who are fun fighters that got by with a strong chin, and once their chin was gone, their fights became significantly not necessarily less fun, but more cringeworthy because we're like, well, I don't want to see this dude go out there and get knocked out again.
Yeah,
but I want to see him fight. So like shit.
Yeah, but Nico Price, he's gonna try his best to put on an entertaining fight and win this week. Next up, Kevin Holland versus a last name that I can just not pronounce.
Mikhail Olenjachuk. Speaking of guys who put on entertaining fights but don't necessarily win all of the entertaining fights, 2-3, Kevin Holland. Damn it. Can I please get a win from Kevin Holland? I'm not even sure this is the one that's going to do it.
No, I think he will this week because they're fighting at middleweight, kind of a last minute fight. There's two glaring red flags on Mikhail Olajaychuk's record to me right there, and it's Michel Pereira and Caio Barallo. Those are two guys that are on the up and up right now. They're really good strikers. They have really good jiu-jitsu as well. But a loss to Michel Pereira kind of screams to me that creative strikers really throw you off your game. And what is Kevin Holland if not a creative striker? Kevin Holland thrives in these short notice, late, these last minute fights, just setting things up last minute. Kevin Holland's really good at jumping in there, especially at middleweight too. He's coming back to middleweight. He's been fighting at welterweight his past couple of fights. Everything here kind of screams Kevin Holland's success to me. I think he's a justified minus 250 favorite. I think he's going to go in there in style on Michael Olajaychuk, if that's how you say it. So I'm going with Kevin Holland this week.
Yeah, I just want to take a peek at Olajaychuk's opponents. Great. Yes, he lost via rear naked choke to Michel Pereira, which is a wild guy. I think there are some similarities. Michel Pereira may be the Spanish shorter version of Kevin Holland to some degree. I mean, they have crazy personalities, both of them in their own right. I guess maybe crazy is not the right word, but like crazy, unique, different, fun, enjoyable, charismatic, that kind of stuff. Chidi Njoku, not a great win as it aged. Cody Brundage, fair win as it aged. Sam Alvey, Shamil Gaktomov, Ludeskus Lukakis, not Gian Vellante. I mean, a lot of these names here just really don't age well in the losses. Ovan St. Preux, Jimmy Crute, Dustin Jacoby, Caio Barallo, Michel Pereira. I think these are guys who you could see a clear discrepancy between where the wins are coming from and how their careers panned out and where the losses are coming from and what level and trajectory and skill level those guys were at. So I think Kevin Holland would fall into the loss category for Michael Olajaychuk. So I think Kevin Holland's going to get it done. If that makes sense. You understand what I'm saying by that? But by him falling into the lost category caliber of fighter.
Yeah, right. Like, in order to beat Kevin Holland, you have to beat those other guys first.
Yeah, like if we're going to separate into two columns, like all of the losses on Olajaychuk's record were of guys of clearly a higher caliber. And I think Kevin Holland more likely resembles that guy than the guys that he's losing that Olajaychuk is beating, which are kind of like, okay, he's like, okay, solid. None of them are like particularly high in the rankings.
Yeah, so, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
And you look at these losses. Khamzat Chimaev, Stephen Thompson, which he broke his hand, Jack Della Maddalena, and Michael Venom-Page.
Yeah, Kevin Holland only loses to the cream of the crop, really.
Marvin Vettori, Derek Brunson. Like, these are...
That was at middleweight, though, and that was like pre-wrestling.
Exactly. And that was before he got in shape and started taking things more seriously. So,
yeah, maybe Michael Olajaychuk goes out there and tries to out-wrestle Kevin Holland, but I don't think, and even then Kevin Holland has improved his ground game so much and has had some really good jiu-jitsu in the past, even before he started working at, who did he train with? He went to
Travis Lutter.
I fought Paulo Costa back in the day, actually. You might be able to find it on there.
Oh, Johnny Hendricks.
Yes, Hendricks Stan.
It's a Hendricks Stan.
Yeah, so he trained with him for a while, right? And then even before then, though, he was a jiu-jitsu black belt and had like that knockout of Jack Ray Souza off of his back. So I just see so many paths to victory for Kevin Holland here. He's pretty decent off of his back against certain guys in his full guard. So Kevin Holland. All right, meat and potatoes time. This is everything else was the appetizers and the sides. This is the meat and potatoes right here. Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa. So pumped for this one. 5-round co-main event. Please like, comment, and subscribe as we jump into this one if you're here with us now. Let us know what you think of our picks so far. And let us know what you think is going to happen in this one as we break it down. I am a little conflicted about this one, because Paulo Costa is showing now that he wants to be active. He looked pretty decent in his last fight against Robert Whittaker, right? Had moments where that was at his last, yeah, exactly. Stunned Robert Whittaker at the end of that first round with the spinning wheel kick. his 2 fights ago against Luke Rockhold, really pieced up Luke Rockhold, made him bleed real bad. Some iconic moments in that one. Luke Rockhold's last fight in the UFC, rubbing his blood all over Paulo Costa. Prior to that, Marvin Vettori, just a couple of duds along the way. But now he's showing a little bit more activity. He's showing a little bit of power. He's flexing his power when he's fighting against guys like Luke Rockhold and Robert Whittaker. But Sean Strickland broke it down very well in his media interview when he said that Paulo Costa's game plan seems to be to kind of back up, retreat a little bit, and then throw a big shot. And Sean Strickland has fought guys like that in the past. I'd like to believe that at this point in his career, Sean Strickland is really leaning back into that Philly shell, extremely defensive style, 1-2 jab. And I think that game plan really does beat Paulo Costa this weekend, because I think he's going to be looking for Paulo Costa's big shots and then just countering the 1-2 right off of that, using the push kick. And when it comes down to it, this is a 5-round fight. So Sean Strickland has a lot of experience in 5-round fights. We've seen what he can do in a 5-round fight. His gas tank is unlimited, basically. I want to see him in a 10-round bare-knuckle fight when he leaves the UFC. Like, that should be how he retires, because that'll just be a 10-round, 2-hour-long bloodbath. Mm-hmm. But I think that Sean Strickland's gas tank totally outlasts Paulo Costa. The push kick is going to be there for him. And I see Paulo Costa maybe stunning him in the first or second round. Hopefully he doesn't put his lights out completely. But having maybe a big moment, round 1 or 2, and then Sean Strickland just using his game plan, backing Paulo Costa down, having a couple of big moments himself, and winning a 5-round decision. That's really how I see this one playing out. That's how I would like to see it go down, because Sean Strickland, I personally believe, deserved an immediate rematch for the belt. And I think that this fight continues putting him on the trajectory back to UFC gold. So going with Sean Strickland here, 5-round decision. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Not going to lie. Full transparency, I did zone out a little bit trying to figure out how I was going to change the screens without doing what I just did, where I went back to the center. Like, I would have loved to just be able to swap mine in your positions and keep this screen where it is. But nevertheless, we'll, go. I thought you were building towards Paulo Costa because you were initially praising him at first. But I think at the end of the day, what I heard from you at the end was spot on for me. And that was the fact that Paulo Costa is mainly a decision guy, especially as of late, going to decisions with Robert Whittaker. He won a decision with Luke Rockhold, or whatever he called him. But I think even that, you should probably finish Luke Rockhold if you're going to go out there and finish a guy like Sean Strickland. So if there's not finishing power enough to put away Luke Rockhold at 38 years old, not having fought in a long time, I'm not so sure that he's going to find it with Sean Strickland. And then if you're in a ring with Sean Strickland, is this a 3-rounder or a 5-rounder?
I believe 5-round.
Co-weight middle event. If it's 5-rounder, that only plays more into Sean Strickland's corner, because over 5 rounds, you're going to get tapped up. You're going to get jabbed up by him. He's going to teep you a little bit. He's going to stay defensive, and all of those shots that you land on him are probably going to glance off his hands or something. Remember, this is a guy who fights all the time and takes the least amount of damage out of anybody. So he was in there, and he was standing in there with Dricus du Plessis at the end of the fight. He just didn't engage, didn't move forward. So if we see the Sean Strickland that hangs back, and Paulo Costa that also fights up his back foot and hangs back and waits for a big shot, then I think we're going to have a situation where it may be a boring fight. I hope that doesn't happen. I think Sean Strickland only has to have one boring fight because screw it, I'm not doing that anymore. I also think he's not likely to say that at any time, because he wants to get in there and do the man dance. I think maybe he wants the belt, maybe he doesn't, but at the end of the day, he wants the fight. So I think Paulo Costa is going to try to move forward, and then he's going to end up getting stuck by Sean Strickland's jab, have his head popped back a couple of times. And, I think over 5 rounds, we're going to see the volume of punches that Sean Strickland lands eventually add up on Paulo Costa. He's going to knee him to the body. He's going to teep him to the body, especially if Paulo's going to move forward. If Paulo's going to move back, then Sean's going to move forward again, hitting him with that jab, just staying in his face, not letting him go anywhere, tiring him out. And I think over 5 rounds, the odds that Sean wins 3 of them are high. So I'm going with Sean Strickland to win a decision, not so close, longer reach, same height. but I just think Sean Strickland is very, very, very defensive and very strong with the jab. And speaking of bread and butter fight, that's his bread and butter fighting style. And I think, this is a good matchup for him, and maybe not so for Paulo. But it'll be interesting nonetheless.
Confirmed it's a 5-round fight. And to your point about leaning into Paulo to start, my explanation of that fight, it's what all the good wrestling promoters always have to do. And even as a fighter, you have to do it as well, too. You have to build up your opponent a little bit, right? Because when you beat them, you want it to mean something. Mm-hmm. And this is an important fight. This isn't basically a number one contender fight at this point. Who else is really active in this division? And if Paulo Costa beats Sean Strickland, the former champ, it puts him right back in. It puts him into title contention again after he got molested by Izzy his last time fighting for the belt. That was really embarrassing. But I'm going with Sean Strickland. And sure, we saw him bleed against Dustin Poirier. Against Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis is way more creative, way more unorthodox than Paulo Costa, and they've been talking about these new gloves a lot.
In a far better gas tank.
What'd you say?
In a far better gas tank.
Absolutely. And to that point too, Dricus does have a much better gas tank. But to that point as well, we saw Islam and Dustin talk about this as well, or Islam at least, and Sean, that these new gloves are like really stiff and that they're going to lead to a lot of new cuts and lots of scar tissue opening up. And basically there's going to be a lot of blood on Saturday, I think, with these new gloves. And for a guy who's bled in the past just off of like the 1-2, and basically what I'm saying is, with that 1-2 repeated over the course of 5 rounds, I think that you're going to see a lot of blood from Paulo Costa coming out of like his nose and his forehead. I think he really is going to make him a little ugly, like Sean Strickland said he would. So yeah, leaning right into that 5-round decision, and the judges are going to love the blood. It's going to encourage them further to, jot down 10-9s and 10-8s on the scorecard. So speaking of 10-8s, we got Islam Makhachev fighting Dustin Poirier. And a lot of people are calling for an early finish. Islam Makhachev making it look easy. Potential just, not even going to get to a 10-8 on the scorecards. How do you think it's going to go down?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that makes me think that Islam is going to lose, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Dustin's the older guy, and earlier on in this video, you said that the younger guy tends to win. Islam's also probably the bigger guy. And also, I think Dustin Poirier's wide hips end up being a problem because it's harder to get away from the type of control that Islam Makhachev is likely to get over a 5-round fight. When you have a narrower waist, you have an easier chance to move around and get out of there. Dustin keeps talking about the guillotine. It's hard to tell if that's anything serious or if that's, maybe in the game plan to have Islam maybe potentially looking for that a little bit more. So it opens something else up. He expects him to jump the guillotine, and then Islam goes to defend, and then maybe that's where there's an opening. I can't imagine Dustin Poirier doesn't have something up his sleeve here for his last attempt at the belt. I can't imagine that professional athlete and 2 or 3 time UFC undisputed lightweight champion challenger Dustin Poirier has the same approach to fighting as I do to using my driver, where I'm like, shit, that cut right so hard. Let me line back up and do the exact same fucking thing. So it does the exact same thing. And by the 9th hole, I'm ready to break my driver, but yet I haven't really taken a shot any bit different the entire way. I'm just expecting a different outcome. I can't imagine Dustin Poirier is going into his 2nd or 3rd or maybe even 4th UFC undisputed lightweight championship fight going, well, going to try it again, jump Gilly and see what happens. So I have to think that he's got something up his sleeve here, but I think Islam Makhachev is still going to win.
Yo, I really do think he is going to pull the guillotine, though. What else is he going to do, dude? If like Islam wraps up his hips and gets him against the cage and he's about to scoop and dump him, we've seen Dustin do it 1,000 times before. Now, are you willing to bet on that? That's what it comes down to. I think Islam Makhachev is pretty ballsy, though. Like, Khabib was way more stick to your game plan, rest on your laurels. if he can get in there and score a takedown, he's going to do it. Islam Makhachev, though, we've seen him try and stand and bang with some pretty notable fighters in the past. He's got some balls on him. He's not afraid to throw shots with guys like Charles Oliveira and Alexander Volkanovski and close the distance. And Dustin, I think he's really hoping that Islam wants to box him. He said it at the press conference last night. You tell your coaches to tell you to box or something, or you're listening to your coaches, they're telling you to box. If they stand and bang, there's a chance that I would love to see Dustin Poirier beat Islam Makhachev. Let me be clear. So I'm painting these fantastical, potential situations that are probably not going to happen because let's be real. All the things that you said, Dustin being older, doesn't know if this is going to be his last fight or not, probably doesn't. I mean, you need him to do something special and have a special game plan to go out there and get a win against Islam. And what is he going to do? I mean, it's not like he's been training with Craig Jones and figuring out the butterfly. He's not as adept on the ground off of his back as Alexander Volkanovski was. And we even saw Islam finish Charles with an arm triangle. So I think it's just a matter of when and how for Islam Makhachev. Probably going to be
finished by Charles with what was it? Was it a rear naked?
Got on his back. Charles he climbed up on Dustin's back against the cage and choked him out. I actually called that one perfectly. A couple of years ago, dude, I said that was my clipped tweet or whatever, my pinned tweet. It was me saying Charles Oliveira will beat Dustin Poirier by choke in the third round. And literally as soon as the third round started, climbed up on his back and just, yeah.
It's all right, I got something to get to. I'm done playing around.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Islam's probably going to do the same thing just earlier. I think he's going to want to make it an early, easy night. Get in, get out, collect a paycheck, maybe get a bonus and call it a day. So I think it might be a first-round submission, second-round submission for Islam Makhachev. Just a matter of when and how he wants to do it.
And another thing you have to remember about Dustin Poirier is he had just lost via head kick to Justin Gaethje 10 months ago, comes back in against Benoit Saint-Denis, beats Benoit Saint-Denis, but Benoit Saint-Denis had a freaking staph infection the size of a baseball coming out of his forehead. So the fact that he was allowed to fight, I think is, I would love to know the rules and regulations behind a staph infection and professional combat. But aside from that, the guy was absolutely on antibiotics and drained because of that. And he even said it. And we had said it going into the fight. We go, this guy's wearing giant baseball caps. That's so out of character for him to the freaking press conference to hide the freaking Last of Us infestation coming out of his head. And we're like, oh, yeah, I'm sure he's at full strength. Goes in there, Dustin Poirier knocks him out, something we haven't ever seen anyone do before. And we're like, wow, Dustin Poirier may be the fucking truth. I'm not so sure. I think Dustin Poirier got, lucky, or whether he's using biological warfare on his opponents, I'm not sure. But Dustin Poirier went in there, beat a drained by Benoit Saint-Denis after getting head kicked by Justin Gaethje. And we're like, oh, well, he's going to win now. I don't think that's the case. I think Dustin Poirier is not necessarily better than the last time he challenged. And unfortunately, I think Islam Makhachev is just as good, if not better. Now, speaking of a staph infection, there may be one on Islam's shin, which who knows? I saw Guru point out, and we're from there. We went to, the Prudential Center before. It's at the corner of Lafayette Street. So could be a storybook ending for Dustin Poirier, but not where I would place my money. I mean, listen, he's plus 360, throwing a unit and a half on something crazy to happen, and you root for it. But just understand that you're probably going to be disappointed. It's probably going to be Islam Makhachev. And that's why everyone hates the Dagestanis, because you know exactly what they're going to do. They go in there, they do it, and it's freaking boring. And it's not exciting. It's hard to get excited about Islam retaining his belt against Dustin Poirier, who's 35 years old and, been in this position and lost a handful of times others. And I don't know. It's just not exciting for me if Islam wins.
I don't know, bro. I'm going to be out of my seat tomorrow night. Shine bright like a diamond.
Oh, well, yeah, me too, of course. But that's more my hate against Islam more than my love for Dustin. And you're seeing it now. It's Islam Makhachev could be they just feel like I like personality. I like to enjoy the UFC outside of just the fights. I like everything about it. And, he's boring. Good for him. You're fine. But same reason I'm kind of souring on Chandler. It's you're fucking boring. Do something interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Chandler does most of his interesting things in the octagon, talking between the lines, as they say in football. Islam is pretty boring, and the Dagestanis believe at this point that speaking English basically makes them just marketable in and of itself. Like he said it to Charles when they were fighting. You don't even speak English. No one know what you're saying. No one like you. No one likes you, Islam, just
Which
because.
couldn't be even further from the truth. I was just gonna bring up Charles Oliveira. He has a personality clearly, but he's got a fucking cool aura, man. He exudes like dopeness.
He's illuminated.
I am illuminado by Jesus, or whatever
Yeah,
he says.
yeah,
It's fucking cool. He says cool
yeah.
things, even in a different language. Islam, you're just unlikable. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be so cool too. And we have like AI that could translate in somebody's voice in real time. Like we've been seeing that stuff a little bit. It's going to be really cool when we have that for UFC fights, and it really comes through like perfect translations. Because God bless you. I do like that Brazilian translator that like pretty much is always with like Charles and Alex Bejeda and all those guys. And I like the coach as well, Pilinio Cruz. The big guy that bleaches his hair with all of them. He used to be a fighter himself as well. Couldn't tell by looking at him, but he was a heavyweight back in the day. And those guys are all cool, but it's gonna be cool when we can hear what Charles Oliveira is like saying in real time with the inflections and everything, like perfect translation in his voice. It's gonna be awesome. We're already starting to see a little bit of that. Because you're right, Charles Oliveira does have a great personality. He's got like an aura about him. And Islam is really lacking a personality. Kind of got to see him get a little fired up last night against Dustin when he thought, well, so first of all, he goes up there and he's like, long time no see you. And Dustin's like, what? He's like, no, long time no see you since Abu Dhabi anymore. And Dustin's like, you don't see me anymore? Listen, you're going to sleep tomorrow, motherfucker. And Islam's like, you don't say that. I don't fuck my mother. And he got so upset and put his hand in Dustin's face. Basically, we've seen this happen with Canelo and like a lot of international fighters before too. Like Caleb Plant said motherfucker to Canelo a couple of years ago, and this was like pre-English speaking Canelo, and Canelo lost his mind. He's like, no, you don't fuck my mom, and like he flipped out. And then somebody explained to him after, like, yeah, that's American slang. Like you don't realize how casually we say motherfucker all the time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the comments I saw on it was very funny. Islam Makhachev at dinner with Samuel L. Jackson. Imagine it. That would be pretty funny. He'd lose his mind. That guy fucks his mother. But yeah, so I mean, you got to see him get a little fired up, a little bit of personality out of him last night. They really had to separate the two guys. He got really upset about it. They talked a lot about respect. Respect is like really important to the Dagestanis. Mm-hmm. If they feel like somebody doesn't respect them, they go in there and just brutalize them. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. But you're right. There's like so much storybook stuff with Dustin Poirier going into this fight as well, Lafayette Street and all that. I'm still looking at tickets on Game Time for tomorrow because I'm close enough to go, and I got a couple of friends that are going, and it's just, I don't know. I feel like at this point, me personally, $400 to sit nosebleeds is expensive for a UFC event when you can barely see what's going on. And I feel like the UFC is approaching a point where they're like pricing out their fans with pay-per-views and event prices. Like the cheapest tickets for the Conor McGregor Chandler event in Vegas, what is that, 304 was like, or 303 was like $1,500 or something. That's kind of insane. So at some point they're going to end up pricing out their fans. But I'm looking to see if maybe they drop into the threes. Not too expensive. Like I can afford to go. It's just, sometimes it's better to watch it on television as opposed to sitting in the nosebleeds. I'd rather pay for the pay-per-view. Anyways, a lot of storybook stuff here for Dustin Poirier. Also, before I get off of that topic, Prudential Center, kind of a shitty venue. Their idea of good stadium food, like I'm going to Citi Field later today for the Mets game. Incredible stadium food, the best food that you're going to have. Unfortunately, I'm like on a diet right now, so I can't really go too crazy, but great food, right? Prudential Center, their idea of great food is nacho cheese sauce. And their bathrooms are dirty. Just an overall not great stadium. There's other great venues in the tri-state area that I wish the UFC would frequent more often. but I'm sure they have like a little bit of a contract deal with Prudential Center at this point where they're going to appear there for maybe another year or two. They've done events with them in the past. I guess it's good business, but you have other venues, right? Like so many stadiums. I would love to see one at Barclays. I feel like Barclays is the bowl shape of it. You've been there, is almost built for the UFC.
Yeah, they would put on a great show there. Have they not?
I believe they did pre-COVID. I think it was an event with like Dominic Reyes was on that card. It's been rumored that they were going to go back for a number of years, and I'd really like
23 and 208.
208. Oh, okay.
Khabib versus Al Iaquinta and Rose Namajunas against Joanna and Jacek.
Right. That was when Khabib first won the belt, and that's why Al Iaquinta stepped in on that one because he's a New York guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He stepped in for, who was that, Max Holloway?
Yeah. So the Barclays Center is responsible for, well, I guess that's the New York State Commission for pulling Max Holloway. So anyway, with that being said, I think there's a particularly interesting card and development. Keith hates the Prudential Center. So, yeah, with that, I'm going to get into our pick rundown. So I will go first. I think me and Keith were aligned on basically every single pick on this card. So with my pick rundown, you are also getting his pick rundown. But I will start first. I'm going with Basel Hafez over Mickey Gall. I'm going with Jake Matthews over Phil Rowe. And I'm going with Grant Dawson over Joe Selecki. Jailton Almeida going to get the win over Alexander Romanov. And Roman Kopylov going to get the win over Cesar Almeida. I think that one's going to go to decision. Moving up to the main card, I got Randy Rude Boy Brown over Elijah Zaleski dos Santos. Alex Morono taking it over Nico Price. Kevin Holland over Michael Olin-Jacek. That's a heart and a mind pick, hopefully. Sean Strickland over Paulo Costa. And unfortunately, Islam Makhachev over Dustin Poirier. But I will be wearing anything representing Louisiana that I can.
Interesting. Go out and get a Saints jersey, I guess. I don't know what. Do you have beads from Mardi Gras or Fat Tuesday or anything? Anyways, I'm going with Basel Hafez over Mickey Gall, Jake Matthews over Phil Rowe, Grant Dawson over Joe Selecki, Jailton Almeida over Alexander Romanov, Roman Kopylov over Cesar Almeida, Randy Brown over Elijah Zaleski, Alex Morono to probably finish Nico Price, Kevin Holland over Michael Olajacek, Sean Strickland over Paulo Costa. I like that one to go the distance. And Islam Makhachev over Dustin Poirier. But you got to throw a little bit responsibly on Dustin Poirier. You have to. At that line, the story, all that good stuff, you have to. So just want to thank all you guys at home for joining us for another great episode of Pickin Fights. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out. We appreciate all your support. Let us know what you think of our picks in the comments. Follow us on X and Instagram @_PickinWinners, as well as @PickinFightsTom and @PickinKeith. You can listen to us on Spotify. Full audio, full video. Check us out over there as well. Please subscribe there. Helps us out. Did I miss anything, Tom?
No, can't wait for the fights. And best of luck on our picks because they were all the same. So we're in lockstep this week. Let's go, Dustin.
Yes, sir.